right. So today we're going to talk about 10 lessons on resilience. And I wanted to start off just by doing a quick intro. So this is my first time being a panelist with proposal industry experts here. I'm so excited to join you today. A little bit about me. So first of all, these are my two horses here, Soldier and Remy. They are my boys. I work full-time in the tech industry as a senior IT consultant. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and, fun fact, a certified life coach. And I have my own business, Jessica Lindsey Coaching, and I'm a mom to one human, two horses, a dog, and two guinea pigs. So without further ado, I just wanted to humanize, the person talking to you on the other side of the screen. I'm just going to dive right into what is resilience. So resilience is defined by Oxford Languages as the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And I think that applies today in our environment right now. We just had the pandemic, and now we're seeing the news talk about a recession and layoffs. And then in addition, this particular group, you're working in the sales arena and you're dealing with rejection all the time. So I really like this second way to describe it rather than this technical definition, where we look at resilience as the ability to fall down 7 times and get up 8. So looking at resilience is, what is the skill set that you need to be able to pick yourself back up after rejection, after failure, and keep going. And I do really believe that this is a skill set that we can improve over time. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the classic hero's journey tale that, we watch movies or read books, and there's this character who's overcoming something. And then in the end, they succeed and all is well. And I want to talk about resilience in real life, as far as it's not just overcoming one thing. So, for example, in my own life, I have dealt with a layoff and moved across the country and found a new role. Well, it doesn't mean that everything is just happy forever because I overcame that one thing. That in life, resilience is cyclic. So we need it over and over. And I want to pause and just address anything as we talk about kind of what is resilience. If you guys have any questions, if there's anything in the chat or Q&A, and if not, we can keep going, but I want to make sure I pause for that opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to say that Paul in the comments has said, "Why do we fall, Bruce?" And that's from Thomas Wayne from Batman Begins. I thought that was a really great quote that Paul dropped in the chat. So thank you.
Yeah. So actually, I love that. I love that quote. I think that we fall to learn. So there's an analogy I like to use when we're kids and we're learning to walk or talk or ride a bike, or even as an adult, we're learning to deal with rejection at work. We're learning to speak a new language or whatever we're working on. You actually cannot learn without failure. It's part of the process. So if you see it as a way to learn and then create stepping stone, then now you have that knowledge, and the next time you're not starting over from zero, you're starting over with that stepping stone of knowledge. So it's impossible to learn anything without falling down. So that would be my answer to the quote, "Why do we fall?" Okay, anything else that we want to talk about? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just move on to our next sort of topic. So if you were to do a Google search and look at all of the different resources and compare them, there's a general consensus that there is this group of the top 5 life stressors, and they are loss of the loved one, divorce, moving, major illness or injury, and job loss. And so I want to focus specifically on the career today. And it's not just job loss, although we are seeing a lot of layoffs in the tech industry. In addition to that, it could be going after that promotion and not getting it. It could be going after the promotion and getting it, and now you're stressed out because it's a whole new role. Maybe you want to change industries or change roles within your industry. There's just so much that could be encompassed here. And so as we talk about these 10 lessons in resilience today, I'm focusing in on how it can apply here. But I also just want to acknowledge that all of the other four stressors, they impact our jobs as well. So, how do you show up back to work after the loss of a loved one or divorce, or you've just moved across the country and you don't have the support locally that you had before, or you're navigating how to show up while dealing with an illness, cancer, or having an injury, surgery of some kind. All of those things take resilience as well, to be able to show up to the workplace while you're going through those things. And I'm willing to bet that everyone on the call has experienced one of these five, if not all of them. So I know personally, I have gone through every single one of these things. And everyone at least has moved, right? Moving's the worst. You know who your good friends are because they show up to help you move, right? Okay. So we're going to just go ahead and move on to the first lesson here. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is taking the time to dream about what you want and why you want it, because if you don't, you'll end up chasing someone else's definition of success. And I think this is it can be very touchy-feely at some level, but I want to take it to the practical level that you're never going to get what you want at work if you don't ask for it. And if you're asking for something that you think you should want, but it's not something that's authentic to your goals, your life, or relevant to where you want to be, then it doesn't really matter whether you get it or not. Like, it's not going to help, it's not going to in the end help you get where you want to be. So what I'm saying is, it's important that as adults, we really think about what kind of life do we want and what career is going to be part of that life, and getting that out of our head and onto paper. So one of the practical tips that I have here is the classic to write it down. But in addition to writing down what you want, I also like to tell people, don't let that be a barrier to getting what you want out of your head and into the tangible world. One of the things I love to do is use voice notes, voice apps. The new Microsoft Office has a dictate button where you can just click it, you can talk to it, and it will write everything for you. So if the actual journaling or writing piece of it is holding you back from getting what you want for your life and your career out onto paper so you can break down your goals, find a way that works for you. The second piece of this was so that you're not chasing someone else's definition of success. As you go through the process of writing down what you want, what your dreams for yourself are, you can then dig into, is this something that I want, or where did this come from? Is this coming from an expectation from my company, my family, my just society in general, or is this coming from something that you yourself genuinely want? So one exercise, again, a practical thing that you can do is I challenge all of the clients that I work with in the coaching business to write down 25 things that you want. And it's interesting because there are two things that I find happen for people, and I want to hear what your thoughts are on this right after I tell you what they are. So when I ask people to write down 25 things that they want, most people can rattle off 2 to 3 things, or between 1 and 3 things. And then they either get stuck or they start to ask the question, what are the parameters? They start to ask me things like, well, what do you mean? Can I put down the type of house I want? Or can I put down relationships here? And the answer is that you can put down anything that you want, and to notice that the first thing that your brain does is to look for the box, if you will. You're looking for direction. In careers, I like to ask clients to do this exact same thing with your career. What are 25 things that you want in your career? And then the same couple questions of notice the parameters, the questions, the direction that your brain is looking for, and what that might say about how you're thinking about your career. And again, I want to pause and address anything that we have going on in the Q&A or the chat.
I don't see anything really going on in the Q&A or the chat, Jessica, but what I would love to ask folks, like personally, 25 sounds like a lot. I can think of like exactly what you're describing. I think all of us are probably pretty similar. It's easy to get to a couple, but when you think about 25 things that you want, which, yeah, that just seems brutal. I think I think this is something I'm going to do like immediately once we get off the call.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would love to hear afterwards, if you do this exercise, what questions do you have? What comes up for you? And it can really push you to get outside of your comfort zone. And it goes along with the capture it somewhere on your laptop, in your voice app, on paper.
And real quick, Jessica, as
Yeah.
this relates to sales, I would say that this is probably it's useful to think not only, yeah, I want to hit my numbers next quarter, I want to hit that big opportunity, but maybe also like I want to be able to build the emotional fortitude, or I want to be able to craft my career in a certain way. So I think there's something really to be said about being a salesperson who understands what the future looks like instead of just this quarter.
That's an excellent application. I love that so much. Okay. So
We do have a question from Carrie. Is it okay if we pause really quick?
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Oh, so Carrie asks, it's really hard to get employees to think beyond the traditional career path or typical role progression. I've been working with this for my team for these last 2 weeks. What would you say to that, Jessica? Like, how do you get people to be creative about what they actually want?
So my number one tip for that is to ask them to do this exercise, 25 things you want for their entire life, which you can make it so that they don't have to share that with you. But if they're doing that exercise where they look at their life as a whole, I think sometimes we end up limiting ourselves because we see our career as siloed from ourselves as a person or from our whole life. And that's just not true. Our career is a big part of our life. I mean, we spend so much time at work, the relationships that we cultivate with our coworkers, it's underestimated. And I guess if you look at it as sort of an old school way of thinking, there's work and then there's home. But when you look at your whole life and what type of life do you want to create for yourself, and then think about what career works within that. When you know where you want to go with your life as a whole, it can help inform your decisions of, do I want to become a people manager? Do I want to stay an individual contributor? What kind of work culture am I looking for? What type of work-life balance do I want? It informs all of those things. And then specifically, you mentioned the staying on one career track. I would also be really careful with and ask be really careful with sort of judging what they may say that they want, in that what's wrong with staying on one career track, right? Like that might be what they truly want. And so sometimes you'll go through this exercise just to realize that you've validated the things that you're already doing, and that has value as well. And it's going to be different for each person that you're working with. But you can give them the exercise for their whole life to push themselves outside of the box. And then you could give them the exercise within their career as well, like depending on the situation, who you're working with. And also trying to, what I like to call it is holding space. So when you are working with an employee one-on-one, staying out of, like, if you imagine they have like a little bubble around them, and just imagining yourself as an observer. And for that one moment in time, you don't get to make any judgments, and just observe. And it can give you some really good insight. And also, I totally understand what you're saying because I've been there.
Yeah, it's Lydia says, I had a manager ask what I wanted to be when I grow up. Not only was I already grown up, but I liked what I was doing for work at the time.
Right. I
That's a
think
really
that's a
great
different
comment.
conversation than this. This is, I know what I want, which is actually skipping all the way ahead. One of the 10th points is trusting yourself, right? Like if you know what you want, you know better than anybody else. So don't let anyone else tell you what you should do. This is something that you do for yourself. Okay. Are we good to move on to the next one? All right. So point number 2 is to decide that you're going to go after what you want. And I'll get to the subtext in a minute. The reason why I call this out is because there's a difference between wanting something and deciding that you're going to do it. So you get laid off or you don't win that proposal. Ask yourself, is this just something that I am wanting, or is this something that I've decided I am going to do it? And it's a mental shift that can help you actually get into the frame of mind where you're going to take the actions that you need to take to create the results. So we start off with dreaming and sort of that wanting space, identifying what you want, making sure that it's something that is coming from your own self. And then then shifting and deciding that now we're going to go after that thing. And that this is a decision where you are now showing up, you're determined and persistent. Another word that could apply here would be committed. It's the shifting from I want it to I'm going to do this. And I think this third subtext here applies to what one of our members here was just saying about go ahead and tune out all of the naysayers that think you should take a different path. When you have done the work to identify what you want and choose and decide what you're going to go after, and you are now working that plan, that's your focus. And people who disagree with your choices are irrelevant. And you set that aside and you focus on what you are going after. And that's how you take the action to get it done. Okay, any questions on here? I love how conversational this is. This is my favorite thing, you guys. This is why I didn't put a lot of, I mean, there's a few words on here, but I just wanted to be conversational where you can ask your questions, because my goal here is not to just give you platitudes, but really give you things that will help you where you're at right now.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the comments, but I think probably all of us can remember what that inflection point feels like. When it's like, all right, it's time to go.
All right, let's go. Let's do it. All right. So, okay. So now let's say that, you got laid off, you are looking for a job, and you have identified exactly what you want, which companies you want to work for, what roles you're looking for, you're working an action plan. This is a grounding exercise of know your why. So when you're out there pursuing a job, and bringing this back to the sales process as well, when you're out there pursuing a client, you're going to be hit with a lot of others' opinions of you. You're going to be hit with the rejection. And this is where you have to stay grounded of why you're doing this. What is it that is driving you? And so this is my favorite way to actually deal with rejection, of remembering why you're on this path in the first place and coming back to that, using it as a reminder as you get out there and go after this again and again, whatever challenges that you're facing, coming back to knowing your why and asking. And if you want to know how to do that, you ask yourself the question, what is it that drives me? And that can be the question that brings you back to this place of a grounded knowing why you're going out and pursuing this goal. One other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about here too is that we talk, you hear a lot about motivation, like I'm just trying to get my motivation to go out there and make another offer. Motivation can be fleeting, right? So we want to feel motivated in order to take action. But when you come back to asking yourself that question, what is it that drives you? Know your why, can be very grounding to continually show up even when you are not feeling motivated per se. The last thing here is talking about slipping into it's not fair mentality. What I mean by this is our brains have a tendency to look at the circumstantial situation and say, these things are happening and they're out of my control and it's not fair. And I want to offer that even if that's true and you're in that situation where there are unfair things happening, that when you slip into that mentality, it's not helpful. Where your power is, how to take your power back, is to look at what can you control? How do you want to show up and do that? Okay. I'm pausing in between each one here because I think I saw some things happening in the chat, but I'll go back and ask Catherine if there's anything.
Yeah, so Jennifer was saying that it looks like half of her list revolves around time. How do I carve out more time? For example, working too much or caring for an aging parent. So the things that Jennifer wants tend to have a time focus. So that's what she was noticing.
Yeah. So one thing that you could try, and you may have already done this, but do a time audit and just look at your calendar. And if you're not following your calendar, then just sit down and track for a week. And I know it's going to be next, you're asking me how to get more time back. And I'm saying, do a thing. So adding more time. If you write down how you're spending your time for a week, take that audit and then compare that to your goals. Are you spending time on your goals? And if you're not, then let's look at what you are spending time on. And maybe they are a higher priority than your goals, right? So you mentioned taking care of family members. Sometimes there are seasons in life where that is a higher priority than our career goals. And the phrase I love to add here is, and that's okay. Because what's happening is you want to spend your time in XYZ manner, you're spending your time on ABC, and then you're beating yourself up or criticizing yourself for not spending your time the way that you wanted to. So it just takes first getting the data, that time on it, and then being really honest about what are your priorities. And I know that it's not going to fix itself overnight either. That I think that the key here is really just being data driven. How are you spending your time? What are my priorities? And then looking at what are small changes that I can make. So there is like this tendency for all of us to just want to change everything overnight. So we want the results right away. But there is value in the small things. So 15 minutes is about 1% of our 24-hour day. And so if there's a goal that you are not working on and you feel like you don't have enough time for, look at, can I spend 15 minutes on this? And there's 1% of your day. You owe that to yourself. And if you can't find the 15 minutes to spend on it, then you can do the time audit and look at your priorities. If you can find the 15 minutes to spend on it, but you find yourself thinking that it's not valuable, then we need to remind ourselves that it's like drops of water filling up a bucket, right? That one drop seems so small, but a year from now, you'll have a full bucket. Okay. I would love to hear from anyone who asked the questions too, if this is leading to follow-up questions, if it's helpful, if it's not, I can always.
Yeah, Jennifer said that was helpful. 10 for 10. As an athlete, I agree with you. Do a little bit every day and suddenly you get a lot stronger. Do a little bit every day, suddenly you feel a lot better. Yep.
It's perfect. I love it. Okay, let's go to tip number 4. So this actually, like, we're just flowing right into this next topic. So the journey is the destination. What I mean by that is we tend to get destination addiction, if you will, or this shows up like, I will be happy when I sign that client. I will be happy when I get that job. I will be happy when. And while this is sneaky because it seems true, right? It seems like you're going after the thing that really matters to you, and you are, but also you're blocking yourself from being happy right now, which and I want to pause too, because I'm not saying that you need to be happy or positive all of the time. That is not at all what I mean by this. What I do mean by this is that if it's going to take you 6 months to achieve your goal, then let's look at this like we're climbing a mountain and we're stopping off on some scenic vistas along the way. So we are going to enjoy the climb. We're not only going to enjoy when we get there. And just knowing that ahead of time. And we're going to talk about in just a second, celebrating small wins as well. And let's see. I made the mistake of looking in the chat here. And so, and as well. So Jennifer, I love that this too shall pass. I love that. So, okay, I'm going to just go into the subtext here. So I like to think of this as seasons. So if you look at the sales journey, you look at your career journey, let's just compare it to the seasons of nature, meaning that it's going to change, not going to stay the same. And when you are making decisions and you're thinking about it that way, when we're talking, because remember, we're talking about resilience. Every single one of these things is something that you can either do or remember when you're wanting to increase your resiliency quotient or factor, for lack of a better word. That reminding yourself that things change and everything is temporary, sometimes that can help you make decisions for the right now. Because, for example, you didn't sign the clients, or you didn't meet your quota, you did get laid off, and in the moment it sucks. And we want it to be better right now. It helps you just accept that this is where I'm at now. What do I need to do in this season? It's not going to be forever, but what do you need to do in this season to move you forward? What is the next thing? Okay, before we move on, anything?
It's almost like one day at a time, right, Jessica?
Exactly. That's another way of saying it. One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Right. Yeah, or one workout at a time, right? One drop of water in the bucket at a time. Okay, so while you're on that journey, taking one day at a time, one workout at a time, celebrate your wins, big and small, along the way. And I'm going to use a workout analogy here too, actually. So I started training for a marathon, and one day I did not have time to do my normal workout. I only had time to run a single mile. I did it, and I ended up having the fastest mile time that I have had to date, which wouldn't have happened if I had done the longer run, right? And I decided to celebrate that. It was a small win, right? I could have talked to myself like I didn't have time to do the full workout. I didn't complete my goal for the day. However you want to phrase that, but it's not helpful, right? I love the phrase, you get more with honey than vinegar. It's an old horse training phrase, because we have a lot of flies around the barn. But really, it's just saying that positive reinforcement works. Like when your brain might think it's helpful to beat yourself up and criticize yourself, but that doesn't actually help you get where you want to go. So another way to think about it is like that negative voice in your head. It's just not helpful. What is helpful is to find a way to celebrate your wins, whether they are big or small. And on the next slide here, there's this exercise that you can do that I like to call deposit slips. And I had this drops of water in a bucket, which we've kind of already talked about. It's the visualization of water drops filling up a bucket over time. A deposit slip works like this. So a while back, I worked with a money coach, and she gave me this idea of deposit slips, of giving yourself credit as you go. And so it's something that I've implemented in my life all the time. So I have I guess it's like a jar, but I will write down things like, hey, I get credit, I get a deposit for doing fill in the blank. And that mile run was one of them. So this is kind of similar to, like people will say, make sure that you write down 3 things you're grateful for or whatever. This is a little different because this isn't just what you're grateful for. This is what is one thing you did that you actually did, that you accomplished. And so you get yourself into that mindset where you are actually looking at the things that you accomplished and you're celebrating them. And so, and then you're priming your brain to want to accomplish more and making it easier for yourself along the way without even really realizing it.
I feel like this would be pretty useful in a sales context, particularly like when it comes to proposals, because a lot of times maybe if we didn't win the work, we get down on ourselves. We're like, oh, we got kind of destroyed on this process or whatever. Like maybe we didn't come out on top. But here's what we did do is that we satisfied our internal stakeholders. We built better relationships, right? Like we figured out what we can do better for next time. And it's not necessarily like just trying to see the silver lining, but saying like, what really did we achieve? And if we didn't accomplish much, what can we try to accomplish more next time? Jessica, am I on track with that?
100%. And so you reminded me of something as well. So when we're doing after action reviews or whatever it is what we're doing in our companies, and we always look at what can we do better next time. But what we don't look at enough is what worked. So when I'm looking at doing an after action review, I love to look at what worked, what didn't, and then what are we going to do differently next time? Because it's really important to capture what worked so that you continue to do it, so that you recognize the things that went well. And it also primes your brain to want to continue to do more things that work, which sounds on a meta level, it's cheesy, but that's just the way that our brains are designed to function.
Yeah, that's amazing. A team exercise around this might be something that we would consider as well.
Absolutely. I love
Okay.
it. If you think about, so I've worked as a product owner in the agile space, and as the Scrum teams are doing a retrospective at the end of their 2-week sprint, they are looking for things that went well, things that you can improve. This is where you can implement that if you work in the agile space, or if you're doing after action reviews for the sales, you can specifically ask the team what went well for them and for the team. So an individual as well as the team as a whole. You could also look at that from a client perspective. If I was the client, what would I say went well? Okay, so tip number 6 is it is up to you. And this can seem at first a little bit like, oh man, I'm alone. It's just me. But what I really want to point out to you is that it truly is up to you when it comes down to it. No one else is going to, and they might help you to push yourself. They might support you and love you, but all of those things are ultimately up to you. And what I'm talking about here is taking responsibility for your own life, for your own career, and for whatever went right or wrong in that proposal, that job search, whatever you're engaging in at the moment, making sure that we take personal responsibility for the results, knowing that ultimately it is up to us. And we give our power away. Like I think somebody had mentioned at the beginning, what can we control? Thinking about inputs and outputs at the very beginning. I don't remember their name, but right there, the number one thing that you can do is to look at, am I taking responsibility for the results? How did I show up? And how do I want to show up? Okay, I'm going to pause for just 1 second here and see if we have anything else to discuss. And then we have 4 more points to go.
Yeah, Lydia here is saying that the group context helps because people recognize each other, and sometimes we are our own worst critics. So maybe we would see something positive about ourselves that other people recognize and we don't. And then Paul's saying that personal accountability is huge. Absolutely. I think that it seems scary at first when you realize this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff is absolutely terrifying. And then once you take 1 or 2 steps to build your emotional capacity towards these goals, you say, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And I am more powerful than I thought. I am stronger than I thought. This is also stuff that I've learned as an adult. So Jessica, I appreciate you reinforcing these concepts too.
Thank you. I'm right there with you learning, and it's good news, bad news, right? So it's bad news that it's all up to you on some level, but it's also good news because when it's all up to you, that means you can change it if you don't like it. So that's where the power in taking that responsibility comes from. Okay, so the next one is right on the tail of it's all up to you. Ask for help when you need it. And I love thinking about this in the perspective of people may surprise you with how generous and supportive that they can be. The concept of building your tribe, building your community, people who are there for you and where you don't have to manage your mind when you're around them, that you can just be there and feel supported. When you're in that group, I think it's very important as well to make sure that we're not just taking, but that we're giving back and paying kindness forward and developing this community. But I want to go all the way back to the beginning of asking for help when you need it. So many times, even if we have a community, we can feel unsupported because we're hoping that someone will show up and give us the support that we need. But I would encourage you to ask for it. The worst that can happen is they say no and you feel rejected. And then you can apply these concepts here and go back to, okay, but what, ultimately it's all up to me. I know I'm going to find a way to make this happen and I could really use some help. So I'm going to ask this person. And if they say no, then I know that I could make it happen myself if I needed to. I could go ask somebody else. I'm going to find a way. But asking for help can be so valuable because when you do receive it, it's such a support boost for your self-esteem. And I think this is huge at work as well. So I'm sure that we could all think of a time when if we had asked for help, maybe we would have met that deadline or got that client, but we didn't want to because we were so worried about what that other person or people would have thought if we asked. Any questions or any topic you want to hear more about in this space?
Nobody has anything here, but I will say, Jessica,
Okay.
I reviewed these comments before we conversed, and you fleshing them out here in our conversation. I've got to say that this pertains both to our public and our private lives, right? Like at work, it is really hard sometimes. And I know for proposal managers, a lot of us are one person machines, right? And we are so used to being the go-to person, and we're so used to being the person who swoops in and saves the day. And I think that being able to reach out and ask for help from a variety of stakeholders internally will only benefit us, particularly as we see these layoffs starting to take hold and as we start seeing, teams scaling back and resources becoming constrained. If we don't learn to lean on other people, that's a huge component of burnout in our industry too. And I just kind of want to make that point.
Yeah, this can actually be really helpful for building relationships with your coworkers and stakeholders. It can build trust because they know that you're going to come to them instead of try to take it all on yourself and then ultimately fail because you didn't have the time. It can build trust because you're asking for help and people like to feel needed. This can really build your relationships at work as well. It's not only for yourself. So I love that. It's a great call out. Okay, so this one, what you want is who you are. Um, I want to circle all the way back to when we were just talking about someone was working with their employees on their career path and they were feeling like maybe they were stuck in a box. And we talked about that 25 things exercise, writing down 25 things you want in your life or in your career. This really applies there. And what I mean by this concept of what you want is who you are is that if you want to become, excuse me, if you want to become a manager, you already are a manager. What I mean by this is if you have the desire to become something, you already have that within you. There's a reason why you're drawn to it. There's a reason why you're curious about it. And when you think about it this way, that what you want is who you are, then it gives you the courage to go after those things that you are drawn towards and pulled towards. And maybe this is a little more of a woo concept, but I really think that it applies when we're looking at what do we want in our life as a whole and what do we want in our career. And it's just one way that you might be able to help your brain find the courage to go after something that you're not so sure about. Okay, so our next topic, number 9, is make joy a priority. And this is really important because as a whole, like work has a reputation for being work. And we can bring joy to every space, to especially at work. One of the ways that I like to do this is by saying, let's look for small ways that we can bring joy to what we do. So, for example, when you played the music at the beginning, I'm sure there were a lot of smiles. I saw people saying, "Oh, I love this song." It's just one thing that you did to bring more joy to this webinar, right? So it doesn't have to be this big thing. We don't have to have an offsite where we all go team building and learn how to sail a boat. I mean, that would be fun too. But it can be small and have a huge impact. So just make joy a priority both at home and at work. And here's my challenge for you is that to notice physically how joy feels in your body. That when you are joyful, where do you feel it in your chest, your throat, your gut? What is it? What's that physical sensation? And as you go about your day, notice if that comes up for you when you're doing something that you might not see as joyful. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. So for me, at the end of the day, I take maybe 10 minutes and I completely clear out my inbox. And that actually brings me a lot of joy because then I can go into the evening with true peace, right? That I have, and that's not something that I would have listed out if you were like, what brings you joy? But I noticed when I was doing that one day, I recognized that physical sensation and realized that I actually felt joyful when I was done doing that. And so one reason why I ask people to identify how a feeling that you're trying to incorporate more of in your life feels in your body is because then you can start to recognize that physical sensation in other situations and realize, oh, shoot, maybe I am feeling a little joyful now.
Yeah, Jessica, I was working on a project today where I was doing some technical work. And part of what the joy that I have in my everyday life is figuring out the thing, right? Like solving the problem. And I think that I think so. I think that, we have this concept that joy has to be something that's, kind of sparkly and right. Like it's something that has to be outside of work. But when I solve a problem, I get really excited. And I had to tell someone, I was like, oh, I figured it out. Right. And so yeah, why not share that with people? Jennifer says that coffee brings her joy at work, 10 for 10. Nancy says looking forward to retiring in 3 years, bringing joy into work. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, because you're remembering why you're doing this. And I mean, I don't know where it is. I have a little sign actually that says no coffee, no worky. So I'm all about the coffee as well. I love it. Okay, we are going to wrap up with point number 10, which is we mentioned this earlier, taking every piece of advice you get with a grain of salt, because the only person that knows what is best for you is you. And ultimately what this means is to trust yourself. And I want to talk about confidence here, because there is a way that I like to describe being confident that sometimes can be really helpful for people when they're like, trust yourself is so, I don't really know how to do that, right? So the way that I would look at that is to think about, say you're going into a room for a presentation and you're wanting to feel confident. The way that most people look at confidence is, I'm going to go into the room, give the presentation, and they're going to love it. And they're like pumping themselves up. I'm going to do a power pose. I'm going to pump myself up and go in there and do a great job. But the real confidence is actually not coming from thinking they're going to love it. It's coming from thinking, I will be okay, even if they don't. So that when I talk about trusting yourself or being confident, it's that my favorite shift is to think about, don't be confident that they're going to love it, but be confident that you'll be okay, even if they don't. And when you're in that place is when you can do your best work, because you can show up and be vulnerable. You can, talk about some woo concepts to proposal managers, right? That you trust yourself, you've got confidence that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. And then the best things come out of you in the workplace, and you show up the best that as your best self. We'll go with that. Okay, I want to go back and pause and talk about anything that we might have in the chat or the Q&A, and or anything that I didn't talk about that you guys would like to hear about. I don't know how we're doing on time here.
Yeah, this is perfect on time. We've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. Carrie
Okay.
asked us if we could go back to slide number 5, and maybe revisit that topic a little bit.
Sure.
Forgive me that I don't remember exactly which one that was, but let's
That's
go back and
okay.
take a look.
So it was celebrating your wins, big and small. Is that the right one?
Yeah, Carrie, just let us know. Carrie, would you like me to bring you up and we can talk about what interests you about this? I'll kind of keep the chat open and let us know if you want to speak out about it. I remember that this celebrating the small wins. I don't know if y'all have a way of celebrating the wins at your workplace, but I've worked at several places that have gongs that you hit if you do a good job. So everybody in the office hears that you won. Like, obviously that's not something that we do anymore, but because we're remote, but maybe there's a way that we could bring that spirit back. Okay, Carrie, I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to talk here. Let me bring you up and we can have a little conversation.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much. I wanted to revisit this point because my experience of when I was an employee, a full-time employee at organizations, in terms of wins, was we would only celebrate the wins that were literal proposal wins. This resonated with me because there are so many wins along the way. Like, even if you're not winning that particular proposal or winning that particular sale, there's always something to learn from it. And this just resonated with me because somebody else was posting about win and loss reviews on LinkedIn earlier, and there's always kind of nuggets and things that you can take away as a win that's not necessarily like we closed the deal.
Yeah, I love that. That's an excellent call out. So I'm curious. So how do you celebrate those wins, or have you come up with a favorite way of doing that? Not to put you on the spot here.
Not so much in terms of celebrating wins, but certainly capturing them. I have like just a basic Word document that I'll kind of throw in, if I've got a good bit of feedback from a client, like I'll screenshot the email. Just kind of capturing those so they're all in one place, because like I was talking to somebody that I hadn't spoken to for a while yesterday, and they were asking what I was up to other than the day job. And you take for granted the little things that you're doing in isolation. And then when you say it out loud, I was, wow, I'm doing a lot. Like there's like podcast stuff coming up, articles, like there's a lot of stuff out there. And it's kind of pausing and taking time to recognize that and pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said about capturing all of the wins. So in the corporate environment, one of the ways that I do that is I'll capture my own wins all week long. And then my managers get the joy of a weekly email, totally optional for me. I just send it to them. And I call it the state of Jess. And I include all of the wins in there every week. And so they can read it or not. They don't have to do anything with it. But that's how I capture wins at work as well.
Jessica, I think there's something to that because a lot of us are graphic designers, and I can see us putting together a real that's that's inspiring me to think hard about how I might put together something that's really fun and creative to be able to deliver to my supervisor and bring her maybe a little bit of delight as well.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Such a good conversation. Okay. Carrie, was there anything else you wanted to talk about, or anyone else have anything to add on celebrating your wins and recognizing them, capturing them?
Nancy says that they do Delta and Plus reviews. So Delta for how we could improve and Plus for what went well.
I love that. Okay.
I think a big part, Jessica, I think that ties into the fact that, that confidence when you're describing, the confidence to say, hey, even if I have that feedback that isn't really all that great, I still know who I am as a human being. I still know that I'm a valid, like we're all valid and valuable people, and saying, I'm not going to let negative feedback necessarily get me down. What I'm going to do is take action on it and work with my team. And I'm seeing a lot of folks kind of having that perspective in the chat here as well. Carrie says we're all often great at celebrating others, but not ourselves. 100%. Because, and okay, let's talk about the fact that proposal management is largely a female dominated profession, and we're taught to put that away into a little box, right? We're taught to diminish ourselves. People think that it's bragging. But Jessica, do you think that it's bragging if we acknowledge? I mean, you send a newsletter every week to your boss. It's amazing.
So I both acknowledge that. So even though I do that, I still feel the feelings about, oh, should I send this? But I do it anyway. So I understand, I get it as far as feeling like, oh, you're a woman at work and is it bragging? So the answer is no. But even intellectually knowing that, you still might feel some anxiety or nervousness or fear, but that's where that I'm going to be okay, even if they don't like me or it or whatever comes from. It gives you that, just reminding yourself, I'm going to be okay, even if they don't like it. And it actually allows you to receive that negative feedback in a constructive way. So you're in the word is on the tip of my tongue, but meeting with your manager and they're giving you feedback. It actually allows you to receive and act on that negative feedback because you know that you're okay no matter what. These are things that I can do to improve. And then if it's something that you don't want to do for XYZ reason, you can make that decision from a very grounded place that you're going to be okay anyway.
Yeah, with uncomfortable stuff. And Jessica, we've talked about Jessica and I've had tons of conversations outside of this. And so we both kind of know each other's backgrounds. And my coach would always tell me, he's like, you can endure anything for a minute. You can do anything for a minute. Like you just, right. And those uncomfortable feelings are just series of minutes strung together. So maybe you're in an uncomfortable session. You can get through anything for a minute. You can get through anything for an hour too, for the most part. So
I love it. So good.
All right, so we are, nobody else has any additional comments. It seems like we had a really delightful group of folks joining us today, and I sincerely hope all the familiar faces and the brand new folks that I see here in the chat, we're so happy to have had you. Jessica, if we are interested in getting coaching services from you or connecting with you further, how do we make that happen?
Sure. I will put that up on the screen here. So I had a really cool quote, which you can see in the replay. So you can contact me on LinkedIn. I also have my business on Facebook, or you can just email me directly if you have any questions. It's jess@jessicalindseycoaching.com. And I have one-on-one coaching spots available.
Excellent. I can't imagine I've got to say, one of the best decisions I've ever made was to bring a life coach on board and an athletic coach. And I've got to tell you, we tried it, just like you said earlier, you can't do this all by yourself. asking for help, asking for that expertise personally has transformed my life. Jessica's not my life coach, but I would wholeheartedly advocate for her involvement in your individual pursuits. And I think getting a coach is the only way to advance to that next level. You've got to have someone on your side from that perspective. So thank you so much to everybody who has joined us. Please feel free to connect with Jessica at your convenience. Connect with Pi again at your convenience. And our next session will be on February 8th, where we have Emily Holland rejoining us to talk about how to get your podcast started. And we're not just talking about the tech tools you need. We're going to talk about how to philosophically set up your message, how to build your brand, and how to make sure that you're well positioned personally and professionally to get that podcast off the ground. So thank you again. Great comments coming in. Jessica, fabulous job. We're so happy to have had you. And we can't wait to see everybody for our next session. So enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, friends. Bye.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.